Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in again for another Authors Impact Hub podcast. I am your host, Juanita Woodson, founder of the Authors Impact Hub. And listen, we've been going really strong with our author Q&A, so I'm excited to bring on an amazing author. I love her journey and her story, but I'm going to let her tell a little bit about herself. So we have author Ivy Gray on with us. Ivy, happy to have you here. If you can, just let us know a little bit about your background, where you are from, and the title of your book.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ivy Gray. I'm from Williamsburg, Virginia. I am a nurse, a poet, and a novelist. And the name of my book is From My Journal Notes. All of that was for this. It is a self help memoir.
Yes, yes, I love that. So, what inspired you to write your book, Focus on Self-Awareness and Healing?
So I was at a place in my life during that time where I was transforming or transitioning from kind of old relationships and old environment and old people. And I had moved from Virginia to North Carolina. But I realized that I was still feeling the same and running into the same situations. So I decided that I needed to kind of look within myself to see what else needed to change so that my situation can change. I didn't want to repeat old patterns. So I started practicing self awareness. What about me is causing a pattern? What about me needs to change? And I realized that I still had some healing to do, some past traumas and things that were following me. So it made me begin to do the work.
Yeah.
And during that time, I used a scripture, 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Anyone who's in Christ is a new creature. Old things are passed away and all things are made new. So I used that to incorporate my healing and my journey.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I know you're confronting some of your own self, right, when you write the book, but how do you help readers to confront their own traumas by reading your book?
So I love this question because I love this concept that God gave me when I was writing the book. I like to think of my book as a two-way mirror. So a two-way mirror, on one side of the mirror, it looks like a mirror. All you see is yourself. And then on the other side of the mirror, it's a window so you can see what's going on in another place. And so with my book, although I'm talking about myself and my own trauma and my own process, what I really want is for readers to reflect on themselves. I'm just the kind of like the blueprint or the lighthouse. So I really don't, it's not that I want you to say, look at her trauma, look at her healing. I want you to say, look at her trauma and her healing. Now let me look at myself.
Yeah.
That's what I want people to take from reading that book.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. So you mentioned that you're a novelist, so you're also a poet, right? So how did you infuse poetry into your book? What was that process like for you?
So, and I know it kind of sounds weird. My favorite poet is Edgar Allan Poe. Old poet, kind of like eerie writing style. But what I like about him is he does a lot of self-talk. So most of his poetry is like he's talking to himself or thinking out loud. And that's exactly how I write my poetry. I'm really not talking to anyone but myself. And then with my novels, I love to tell a story and I love to paint a picture. I want to be descriptive enough that your mind starts imagining, but I want you to have your own imagination. So when I write about mental health, I want to write in a way that the reader can talk to themselves and start painting their own pictures. Everything kind of bounces back to the reader.
Yes, absolutely. So I know you touched on this a little bit, right? Mental health. So what unique perspective do you bring to the conversation about self-improvement and mental health?
Okay, so what I'm going through this currently. People don't want to deal with the negative sides of themselves. And people don't want to deal with negative emotions. Everything is, I call it fake positivity. Everything's happy, great, wonderful. My life is amazing. But that's not true. Humans have an array of emotions, an array of feelings, and it's not always good. So I like to address the bad parts of me. I'm feeling this negative feeling. Where did it come from? And now how do I fix it? So I think what's unique for me is I want everyone to look at every side of themselves, even the ugly stuff.
Okay.
Not that I want you to accept it or make excuse, but that needs to be addressed also.
Absolutely. So, can you share any tips on how someone who's like, I want to move to that next phase in my life, right? I want to take a look at myself in the mirror and fix those things, but I have a hard time facing myself or holding myself accountable. So, what are some tips that you can share or say to that person?
Just to practice. Um, a lot of emotional intelligence takes practice. So you're not going to get it right the first time or right away. So if you make a mistake in your thinking or in your behavior, just say, well, now I need to try it again the next time. And I still do that. I get an attitude with my family, or I'm too negative sometimes, or I do something wrong. And then I say, well, now let me practice doing that better the next time. So just practice. Don't give up on yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Give yourself some grace. I love that.
Have some grace.
Yes. So when we talk about writing, so you're a published author, right? So what challenges did you face when you were writing your book and having to talk about your own experiences? How did you kind of overcome any of those challenges?
Well, the challenge was writing the book itself. It took me 9 months. It was hard for me to live backwards. A lot of those things that I talk about were so long ago in my past, and I had already kind of overcame it and tucked it away in the back of my head. So having to clean out my closet and dig up, old skeletons was very hard. And being having to expose that side of myself. The other thing that was hard was not wanting to hurt people. It's hard to tell truth sometimes without other people getting hurt. And I wanted it to be clear that I'm not hurting someone else or exposing them. I'm just telling my side of the story. So that part was difficult.
Okay, okay. And that's a common theme for a lot of like self-help authors, writers, right? We're talking about our own experiences. So, what worked for you? How did you overcome those challenges and those maybe internal thoughts of like, I don't want to hurt anybody else. I don't want them to think that. How did you overcome those challenges and get it on paper and published?
I had to get over myself. And my husband says this all the time. He says, people just need to get over themselves. And I have to do that all the time. I have to realize it's not about me. It's about whoever needs to hear this story and whoever needs to heal in this way. I'm the sounding board. I'm just the example. So I had to get past my ego. I had to get past me. And once I got past me and realized it's not me, it's ministry, then I was able to get it out there.
Yes.
And I also went to certain people and told them, hey, I'm writing this story. You're kind of a part of it, but it's not to hurt you. And do we need to have a conversation so that we can heal our relationship?
Okay.
So, mhm.
I love that though, right? Just that full transparency because it can heal them, help them heal parts of themselves too. So I think it's all about, just what your perspective is as you read certain things. Even if you're like, hey, this is about me, well, take a look at yourself. What
Mhm.
maybe do you need to change about you, right? So that you don't play that character in somebody else's story.
Yeah, and a lot of people hurt you. Of course, they say hurt people,
Yes,
but sometimes they don't know that they're hurting you. They don't know that what they're doing is wrong or how much it impacted or affected somebody else. So, like you said, that gives them the opportunity to heal. So it's a
absolutely.
positive thing.
Absolutely. Yes. So what hope do you want readers to walk away with after reading your book?
I want readers to, and I'm always going to say this, I want you to look at yourself. I want you to take my story and look at your own story. Everybody has a story. Everybody can write a book about their lives. So I'm just the blueprint. So I want people to read my book and then start doing the work on themselves.
Yes, absolutely. So then how can readers begin their journey of self-awareness and healing?
Honesty and accountability. You can't, and this is from my book, you can't heal from what you hide. You have to be honest with yourself. You might not have to expose it or tell everyone, but this is how I really feel. This is what I really went through. This is how it really affected me. These are my behavior patterns and problems because of getting to the root of it. This is
Yeah.
why. And take accountability. Everything's not always everyone else's fault. Um,
Yes.
things are your fault too. So be honest, take accountability, and so that you don't continue to be a victim. One of my favorite scriptures is Proverbs 4, where it says, guard your heart in all things because everything you do comes from that. And being honest and accountable helps you to protect yourself. You're not allowing everything in your heart, everything in your mind, because you're guarding it. In order to guard it, you have to know who you are.
Right.
So for me, the journey to self healing is find out who you really are without the influence of others, without other people's opinion. Who am I really? And now let me guard that.
I love that. Yeah. So you have to break some walls down so you can get to the root of who you are so that you can protect your true self. Absolutely.
Your true self.
Yes. So I always say being an author, a published author is an amazing accomplishment. It's something that your legacy that you leave here on this earth for people to be able to read for years to come. So what feedback have you received so far on your book?
It's funny because I've gotten the same feedback from everybody. So I know that my book is doing its job. Um, People tell me that even though it's a short book, they can't read it from cover to cover because they have to stop and they have to think. Or
Yes.
they'll say, I went through that same thing, but I never put thought into it. I behaved that same way, but I never investigated why. So it's
Mm.
kind of become like a workbook. People have
Okay.
to stop and put it down and reflect and transform and then pick it back up. So that's always the feedback that I've gotten. I had someone last week tell me, because I talk about molestation a little bit. She told me that she's been passing the book around to mothers and encouraging them to talk to their daughters about how people approach you or how people approach their daughters and how they handle them and not to keep secrets and have open communication. So even though it's not a workbook, it's kind of become a workbook.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
pleased with that.
I love that. So other people are truly reflecting on their own journeys and then even helping other people by reading your book. And I know that that was your goal, that was your purpose with it. So I'm happy to hear that it's doing the job that it was supposed to do. I think that's really important.
Passed around a lot too. Most of the time people tell me, I read your book and then I gave it to my cousin or my sister or my aunt. So I think it's making an impact.
Good. Yes, yes. And that's important, right? So for you, what has been like the most impactful or special moment that you've experienced so far as an author?
Um, Being an example. I never thought of myself as an example. A lot of times, I've always been very vocal and honest about how I feel, sometimes to my detriment, but a lot of people aren't. A lot of people suffer in silence. So,
Yeah.
a couple of the concepts that I talked about in my book, people have come up to me and said, I went through that same thing, but I never thought to talk about it. Or, I'm glad you said that because that happened to me too. So, just being able to be the voice of the people, so to speak,
Yes.
the voice of the unheard. I'm actually really passionate about that. I want people to be seen and felt and heard. And if it takes me having to do it first, then that's
Yeah.
something I'm willing to do. As hard as it is to do, I'm willing to do that.
Yes, and sometimes like your purpose is not just for you, right? So sometimes showing up for yourself, it helps other people to show up for themselves too. So like I said, it's not easy, but it's necessary and it's worth it. So I commend you on being able to share your
Thank
testimony, share
you.
your journey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to an aspiring author who wants to address mental health themes in their own writing?
Mm, I keep saying this, but it's not about you. So don't make it about you. readers wouldn't, especially me as a reader, I'm an avid reader, but I'm learning that readers want to see themselves on the pages.
Yes.
They want to read a book and what does this have to do with me? So for an author who wants to write about self-help or mental health, I'd say make it about the reader. You can share some things about yourself as a guideline, but people want to see themselves. So make it about them.
Make it about the reader. Yes, that's why it's important to know who your target audience is, so you can speak directly to them. This has been great. I always love chatting with you, Ivy, and talking about your book and all the amazing things. So, are there any new things that you're working on coming in the future that you can share with us?
I'm doing my conference with you, the Moments for Moms 2, Peace, Patience, and Balance. I'm excited about that. I'm excited this year to try to get out of my comfort zone. I'm not a speaker, I'm a writer. I thrive with my words on the pages, not spoken. So just getting out of my comfort zone and being able to speak and articulate in the way that God sees fit. I'm excited about that. I started writing part two to from my journal notes. It won't be called that. I haven't put a title on it yet, but I want to talk about the other side of trauma because
Okay.
it's one thing to live on the side of trauma and then you heal, but it's a whole new world on the other side, and it's other struggles that come along with that, like imposter syndrome and feeling worthy, survivor's guilt, and do I deserve the life that I have right now? It's a whole nother side. So I'm kind of writing part two to that and wanting people to know that it's okay to be happy. A lot of
Yes.
times when you've lived a life of trauma and hurt and pain, you don't think that happiness is for you or that you
Right.
deserve it. So when you get it, you kind of sabotage it
Right.
or throw it away because you don't think it's for you. So my second book will be talking about how, this is for you.
Yes.
I'm excited about that.
I'm excited too. Listen, I'm like, okay, I love this because all of those things, right? When, like you said, when you survive like trauma, certain trauma, whether that's as a child or even as an adult, and then you finally get to that place of, oh, I can let my shoulders down, I can breathe a little bit. You maybe hold back in that space because you feel like, okay, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop sometime,
Right.
right?
Waiting for something bad to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm excited to read that and get those tips that I know you're going to drop there. So, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And then how can we connect with you on social media and then also purchase your book, right? For anybody who's listening and they're like, I need to hear her story. She said a lot of things that resonate with me. I want to grab a copy of her book.
You. So I have Instagram, which is Olori Olori_Ivy, and then I have Facebook, which is Ivy Marshall. That's my married name. Um, I have my website. I really want people to start reaching out to me on my website. I don't want to be a social media queen
Yes.
um, at all. So my website is www.towhomitmaydesire.com. So those are my platforms.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure that you connect with Ivy. And then I always end the show with one last question, right? And that is, what impact do you want your work, so your books and your brand as an author to leave on the world?
Mhm. I want everyone to have the boldness and the confidence to tell their own story. I want everyone to have the awareness to guard their own heart because that truly has been what's changed my life. Being
Yes,
aware enough to guard my own heart. And I have two beautiful daughters. I want to be an example for them. I don't want them to have to relive the patterns of what I've done. I don't mind them knowing about it, but I want them to evolve further than that. So I want to leave an impact on my daughters, and I want people to start thinking about leaving their own impact on themselves and their families.
absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you for taking some time out this morning to
Thank
talk
you.
with us about your journey as an author, sharing some tips with us on how we can hold ourselves accountable as we move to those next phases, transitions in life. So, listeners, make sure, as always, that you like, subscribe, share. Go connect with Ivy first on her website, right? Connect with her on social media as well. Until next time, thank you.
Bye.